Okay, hey everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. We were running into some technical difficulties. But welcome to our STEAM Passport virtual field trip series.
There we go. I hear you.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. So my name is Ashley Lynn. I am the founder of Project Exchange, which is bringing you these field trips today. Our mission is to help every student access a meaningful cross-cultural learning experience as part of their education. And so here with us today is Amy, Kristen, and Angie from the U.S. Forest Service. So they are amazing female civil engineers in the Forest Service, and they're doing really cool work from keeping ski lifts safe to ensuring national scenic areas are accessible to all. So they're here today to share kind of their story on how culture, gender, and community identity has shaped their STEAM journey. So without further ado, they're going to take it away.
Okay, well, we'll start really quick, just introducing each of ourselves, and then we'll get into our PowerPoint.
So, hi, I'm Angie Perez-Delgado. I'm a geotechnical engineer out of the Portland office.
And I'm Amy Thomas. I'm the Deputy Director of Engineering in the Pacific Northwest and Alaska regions of the Forest Service.
Hi, I'm Kristin Austin. I'm the Region 6 Sub-Regional Engineer, and I sit on the Mount Hood National Forest in Sandy, Oregon.
And just give us one sec.
We're going to pull up our presentation here in 1 minute. I can see it.
So there should be a green share button at the bottom of your screen.
Oh, that's right. Thank you.
Yep.
And share computer sound, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Can you see our screen?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay. Now we to control it?
Sure. Okay, so we would have really liked to bring you all out virtually with us to a really cool location in the forests, in the places we work, but we decided to come broadcast to you all from the office and do a PowerPoint, but we've included some really cool pictures, so hopefully you get a good experience from this media format. So the Forest Service is an agency in the Department of Agriculture, and nationally we help manage 193 million acres of public lands across 154 national forests in the United States and Puerto Rico. In the Pacific Northwest region, we manage 24 million acres across the 2 states, Oregon and Washington. We've got 16 national forests, 2 national volcanic monuments, 1 national grassland, and 1 national scenic area. And the mission of the Forest Service is to sustain the health, diversity, and productivity of the nation's forests and grasslands to meet the needs of present and future generations. And so as engineers working for the Forest Service, we have the really awesome responsibility of helping to manage the infrastructure that supports public land management. And so some good fun facts and figures for you about the infrastructure in the Pacific Northwest region. We have approximately 90,000 miles of roads, about 1,500 bridges. We've got around 6,500 facilities, 540 drinking water systems, and just under 1,000 wastewater systems. And we also have 23 dams that I'm sure Angie will talk to you about, and about 1,200 trail bridges. So we have a lot of work to do in the states of Oregon and Washington. And so the slide you're looking at is just a little bit of a pop quiz, and maybe when we go to questions later, if you could guess what we're looking at in that picture, that's a place within our region here that is a very popular recreation spot. Okay, so we thought we'd we play a very short video about what it's like to be a civil engineer in the Forest Service, just a couple minutes long, and then we will start talking about our personal journeys into the field of engineering and specifically the Forest Service.
My name is Tony Addison. I'm a civil engineer for the Forest Service. My job involves planning, design, construction, maintenance, and operations in a forest environment that is usually remote from supplies and under unique terrain and conditions. My job encompasses all of the forest facilities. That bridge over there would have been designed and constructed by a civil engineer. When I first started working for the Forest Service, I was a SCEP student. SCEP means Student Career Employment Program. We did a lot. I did staking, slope staking. We did a lot of road decommissioning. We did aquatic organism passage surveys. I would join the Forest Service because there's so much variety as an engineer. You don't do the same thing over and over again. You know, one day you could be working on bridges, or you could be working on road design, or you could be working on the seawall construction. It's just so much variety that you don't normally do if you're a civil engineer, a structural engineer, or transportation engineer. I joined the Forest Service because I really like the people that work for the organization. And I feel like in a work environment, that's the most important aspect to any environment, is the people that you work for and that you work with, because it allows for you to have a long future in the agency and basically a happy life. Working for the great outdoors means you can enjoy nature and get paid for it at the same time. I get to run to the top of the mountain, scream at the top of my lungs, see the beautiful green forest. I would want to stay in the Forest Service because I feel like I would never get bored. And I feel that's the most important thing as an engineer, is that I don't want to do the same thing over and over again.
Okay, so I'll start with a little bit about my personal journey to where I'm at today. Again, I'm Amy Thomas. I grew up, my father was in the Army, so I was a classic military brat, and we moved every couple years. I got to live all over the US and spent some time overseas in South Korea. I went to a couple different high schools across 2 states, Arizona and New Jersey. And my memory of middle school and high school was I really loved math, and I played a lot of soccer. There's a little, oh, that's okay. No, it's fine. Just a picture of my soccer uniform. So I like how these slides go transition, so I'd keep them on their toes. So I graduated high school on a Friday. There I am. And then I reported to the U.S. Military Academy at West Point that following Monday. So I don't think I realized that the summer before that would have been my official last summer of no work and no school ever, but that was the case. Not a lot of time to think, which was probably good. Go ahead. So if you haven't heard of West Point, it is one of the military academies where you get your degree and then you go into the military. West Point, you typically go into the US Army when you graduate. So everybody, I think it's still this way. I did graduate a while ago, but at the time that I was a cadet, everybody graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Engineering. And so you didn't necessarily have to major in engineering, but you took enough coursework to get that degree. I did choose to major in civil engineering. There were only 2 of us women that did that, graduated in 1998. And in the whole class, graduate class, there were roughly 8 to 10% women. So definitely in the minority in terms of gender going to that school. And then, like I said, you graduate and you get commissioned on graduation day, and you're officially in the Army as soon as you graduate. There's a couple pictures in uniform while at school. That's the uniform that you wear to do fun parades. That was graduation day. So you can go into several different branches of the Army, and being a civil engineer graduate, I chose to go into the engineers branch. And so I was commissioned as an officer, and lucky for me, I was able to spend my Army days in Hawaii. So I reported to a topographic engineering unit in Hawaii a few months later. Some fun military training pictures. So after the Army, I did not want to leave Hawaii, so I stayed there for quite some time. I actually lived there for about 10 years. But I did go back and get my master's degree while I was there at the University of Hawaii, and also did a graduate degree in civil engineering. I kind of continued to work in support of the military and Department of Defense for many, many years after that. And I think the thing I wanted to mention is sometimes when people think of civil engineering or engineering in general, they think of very scientific careers, and there's a component of civil engineering that's more project management based, and a lot to do with relationship building and managing project schedules and costs and solving problems. You're not necessarily sitting at your desk designing a bridge or a building or doing calculations, but you're dealing with more of what I would call the people side of it. And that's always sort of the side that I was more interested in. So I did sort of decide to focus on jobs that were more project management centered. That's a project when I worked for the Navy, and we did a project to look at the communication towers along the southern border that were going to be receiving new equipment. And so you had to analyze them structurally to make sure that they could hold the additional equipment. So now I came and started working for the Forest Service in Portland, Oregon back in 2010. So I will be at 10 years pretty soon here. I had never really heard of the Forest Service growing up all over the US. I guess I just didn't spend a lot of time in the forests, or just had a very little awareness of the forest and this career option. So I feel like I stumbled upon a really awesome place to work. The last position I was in was a very relationship-based position, like I mentioned before, where I was able to work as a liaison between the Forest Service and the Federal Highway Administration, working on mostly road projects in the National Forest or outside of the National Forest, but accessing forests. And it was awesome. I got to do really cool projects, be in the woods a lot, probably not as much as Angie or Kristen, but a lot for me. I also worked to support the state of Alaska and Montana and Idaho. And the other cool thing about working in the Forest Service, and it's not an engineering-centric organization, so we have the privilege of working alongside a lot of different scientists, social scientists, biologists, hydrologists, and I really like that because I like to learn new things, and I like to be around people that have different perspectives and different backgrounds. So I did literally get to ride my bike for work one day, and that's the picture you see up there. And then the other picture was a bridge replacement project that I got to be involved in. And that bottom picture is sort of how you get around in the state of Alaska, particularly in Southeast, where you get to ride on a lot of different float planes to go from island to island. I'll turn it to Kristen.
All right, I'll go next and tell you a little bit about my story and how I got into engineering. I'm Kristin Austin, Region 6 of Regional Engineer. I grew up in a very small town in Oregon, and the picture on the bottom in the middle, that's me in second grade. And I included that because that was really the first time that I think I realized that I liked math and science. My second grade teacher actually formed a team and we would go to competitions to do math and science projects. And that's when I really realized that I enjoyed math and science. As a kid, I spent a lot of time in the outdoors. So my dad was an avid fisherman and we went camping and hiking, and that's really where we vacationed as kids. I also played a lot of sports. So I usually was playing basketball or volleyball or softball. That's really what kept me busy. And when I graduated from high school, I kind of had a thought in the back of my mind that I might become an engineer. I thought that I would combine kind of my love for the outdoors with engineering and maybe be an environmental engineer. So that was my thought. So next I went to college at Oregon State University. And when I got there, I thought I was going to pursue environmental engineering, but I quickly realized there was a lot of chemistry involved. And that's really not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be outside. And so I pursued a dual degree in forest engineering and in civil engineering. I got a degree in both of those. There was probably a handful of women in civil engineering, and I was the only woman in forest engineering. While I was in college, I had a lot of internships, and so this is something I would definitely recommend to everyone is go out and find internships when you're in college and try things out. I spent 2 summers on a fire crew out fighting wildfires, and that was one of the best experiences that I had, being part of a team, being outdoors, being physically active. It was a great experience for me. And then I also had a couple of engineering internships as well. I worked for a government agency and I also worked for a private firm as well. And that bottom right-hand side, that's my headshot when I went into consulting as a consultant. You can go to the next slide. So my first job was working for a very large private engineering firm, and it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of fast-paced projects that were constantly coming at me, and I got to focus on transportation engineering. I did a lot of planning work, like long-range planning. I did design work, and then I got to go out in the field and actually build projects as well. I got a pretty good taste of what transportation engineering was all about. One of the things I got to be involved with in private industry was roundabouts. That was kind of a new thing back then, and there wasn't a lot of guidance out there. And so I got to design a couple of roundabouts. And the bottom right-hand corner, that's in my hometown. So I actually got to design a roundabout in my hometown. And while I was in private industry, I still spent most of my weekends outside, out in the woods, recreating, rafting, camping, hiking. So that's really what I did personally. Go to the next slide. So then I took a position with the Federal Highway Administration and did a lot of design work and construction work for that agency. That's a federal agency, so that was a big switch going from consulting into the government. And what I really liked about this job is it combines kind of my personal interest with being outdoors with my engineering interests. So it was a great fit for me. I got to work in some beautiful places, and I put some slides up there of Glacier National Park. Spent about 5 years working on the Going to the Sun Road. And the bottom left picture shows this road that just winds up into the mountains, and it's narrow and it's steep, and there's beautiful stone masonry that just lines the road. It's all historic. I spent 5 years designing projects. The middle project, that's triple arches on the Going to the Sun Road. And if you look kind of closely, you'll see there's a crane. And then if you look in the red dot, you'll see a carriage down there. And this is a viaduct. And so you're basically, it's a bridge that people drive over. And there's people working down in that carriage to repoint the stone masonry. So it's just a pretty unbelievable place to work, and one of those projects I'll never forget. I then came to work for the Forest Service, and that's where I'm at now. And you know, it's also a great fit for what I like to do personally and the work I like to do. What I like about my current job is just the variety of work that we get to experience. Every day is a new adventure. You just never know what's going to happen. We work on roads, bridges, trails, facilities. We also manage the fleet out of my group that folks use at the Forest Service. So there's always something new and different going on, and I really enjoy that. I get to work outdoors. I put a couple pictures up on this slide. The bottom left side, that's me and my kids, and we're at Multnomah Falls, and that's one of the forests that I work on. So I still take them out and we get to enjoy nature. And then the other picture is on the other side of the country, the White Mountain National Forest. I went there personally and got to go and see the fall colors. And so if you just look between those two pictures, there's national forests all across the map that you can go visit. And that's what I like about my job, is we get to provide access to people to enjoy national forests across the country. Pass it to Angie.
All right. I want to show you guys some videos, so I'll bring the laptop closer to me quick. All right, so I'm Angie Perez-Delgado. I'm a geotechnical engineer, as I mentioned before. So let's see. All right, so I started out, well, I grew up in small towns of Oregon and California. My graduating class was 25 students in high school. All my classes were really small, so I'm not used to big schools. Then in high school, I wanted to be a soil scientist or engineer, but before engineer, I did think about being an architect because I like to draw. But I loved math, so I wanted to make sure I used my math skills, so that's why I decided for engineer. And then, since my dad didn't let me go to a large university too far from town, I forgot to mention, I love horses, the outdoors, and dancing with my sisters. But so since I didn't get to venture out too far from Bernie, where in California, I went to Chico State, which was only about an hour and a half from where my parents lived. And it turned out to be great because there were so many opportunities there, and I met so many people and just great groups of students to work with that had similar backgrounds to me and enjoyed engineering as much as I did. And so I tried a little bit of everything. The bottom left picture shows me in the Human Powered Vehicle Club competition, racing a bike that we built. And then on the top right is the American Society of Civil Engineers geotechnical challenge, where we built a box and tried to and put strips of paper inside to try and reenact a retaining wall and see how much load it could hold compared to others. We did win third place on that one. Other groups that I was part of was MESA, mathematics, engineering, science, achievement. That just opened up so many doors for me, helped with resume builders. It helped me get my first internship job with the Forest Service as well. And then I did graduate in civil engineering in 2015. And that's me with my best friend who also graduated in civil engineering. And our classes, if I look back, we did have probably 2 to 3 girls per class minimum, but no more than 5, I'd say. And our classes were pretty small too, like 35 people, which I really enjoyed. And so it kept that small town feel for me. It didn't make me want to go back home. I really enjoyed college. And so this is how I got started with the Forest Service. As I said, MESA provided opportunities with the Forest Service internships. And I actually didn't know about the Forest Service until I went to college. I would go and use the Forest Service lands, but I never really knew them as the Forest Service. I just knew it was the outdoors, like let's go to the lake, or let's go have a picnic at this nice location, but I didn't know it was a Forest Service. So I started on the Plumas National Forest. Then I got an internship / full-time job with the Shasta Trinity National Forest. So I was actually still a student when I worked for the Shasta Trinity, and then they converted me to a full-time position, which was really great. And these pictures below show where like I was an inspector on a project, and then on the right or the middle picture is where I'm working for a fire assignment as an engineer. And then, of course, now I work for Oregon, Washington, and Alaska, but in another type of engineering. So this is from Shasta Trinity, and these are the videos I wanted to show you guys. Being a roads engineer means that I worked on improving our roads, and there was all types of roads, not just our dirt roads, but since I can't play them directly there, I wanted to show you here just a small clip. This is the oil being spread on top of our paved surface. It was old and cracked, so we wanted to make a smoother riding surface for vehicles. And then we have this one is bringing in chips, tiny little rocks that fall into the oil and then let them set for a little bit, and they provide a nicer surface and protect the road from getting more cracks. And then this one is just putting in a new asphalt road. And that was really short, but it's probably about 4 to 6 inches being laid down. And just, I had to carry a little heat gun and check how the temperature was of the asphalt to make sure that it wasn't too cold. So that was my job on that project. And then, let's see. But now that I'm a geotechnical engineer, I work with soil and rock a lot. And that is me on the bottom left with my supervisor. I'm hitting rocks with my handy dandy rock hammer that's in my hand. Here's a close-up of the rock hammer. And basically we try and figure out the properties with just small tools that we can carry out to the field and not have to bring in big drills. So this one we do a rock quality test where we hit the rock and see if it craters, if it dents the rock, and check the hardness of the rock. And then I also am lucky enough to work on dams, and this is a really cool view from on top of the dam of Olive Lake in Oregon. And this one has some pretty cool instrumentation. Oops. And because we want to check the seepage that goes through the dam, we install these piezometers into the ground, which have already been pre-drilled. And so we take them out once a year and see how much water has been flowing through there. And if we see that there's a lot of water moving through there, then that will dictate that's an emergency. So we want to solve the problem as fast as possible so our dam doesn't fail, because we want to keep that beautiful lake in the background. So yeah, the parts about my job that I love is being able to hike through beautiful places. And here's some pictures with my coworkers in the background. We're hiking back to the road after we were inspecting some sites for trail bridges. The one on the right is at a glacier in Alaska. We had also been inspecting some other sites for trail bridges. And by inspecting, I mean we go and check the rock if we see rock, or if it's soil, we bring back samples and we try to do tests at the office to try and see if they are suitable for putting a bridge foundation on them or not, and what it takes to put in a trail bridge. So I always see cool things like these ladybugs on the bottom left. I think they were just trying to stay warm. And then the flowers on the right, I thought it was pretty neat because this was after a fire area. The next year, it just bloomed just beautifully, and I just never expected it to look so beautiful after a fire, so that was neat. And every project is different, as has been mentioned. The first year that I started for the Forest Service, I had the opportunity to go to the country of Georgia and work on a project there through U.S. Forest Service and another program called USAID. So we got to be on the site, drilling. I don't think this video works either, but no. Oops. And it was pretty unique opportunity that I couldn't just directly talk to the workers. I had to ask for a translator, and we had to do some sign language and try to interact with each other. But these are some of the samples of rock that we got from that drill machine that's on the left. And then we check to see how many gaps there are and if there's water seeping through the layers, because we wanted to put in a new road for this one. But yeah, I love my job, and I can't wait to see what else comes up for us to do. And I think we're ready for questions now.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. For all of our attendees, feel free to ask questions using the chat function in Zoom. So just type your questions in the chat and we will answer that. I see there's already one question in. We have a classroom from the Midwest and they're asking, are there Forest Service jobs all over the United States?
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
And all different kinds, scientists, engineers, foresters. Yep.
Okay. Awesome. So for anyone else with questions, please type them in the chat. And as we're waiting for questions to roll in, I did have a question for Angie. It was really cool when you talked about being able to go to travel to Georgia with USAID and working on an engineering project there. So, and you talked about like not being able to communicate with the workers like in a common language. And so I'm just wondering, what are some of the, I guess, the biggest challenges that came up as kind of during that project, and how did you and your team overcome it?
Well, I guess the biggest challenge was the language, because we only had one translator, and like all our drillers were not even from Georgia. They were from Azerbaijan, south of Georgia, and they only spoke their language from their country. And then the guy that was working with me surveying, he was from Russia, so he only spoke Russian and a tiny bit of Georgian. So our translator was amazing, and we had to just be able to share her between ourselves because it was a group of 4, and there was a road at the top that needed to be repaired and one at the bottom. So if I was surveying down below, I couldn't just have Miriam help me, our translator help me. So I have to call her, and so switch the phone back and forth, and we made it work.
Okay, awesome. And so let's see, another question that came in was, is there an engineer that works with glass?
Works with what?
Works with glass? I'm not sure. Maybe Sarah, if you could clarify what your question was. Like, yeah, maybe just expanding on that. Meanwhile, let's move on to our next question that says, do you live on the work sites that you work at?
Well, for me, I sometimes go and don't live at the work sites. I live in Portland, and most of our forests are further spread out. And I sometimes do get to stay the night nearby so that I can quickly access the area the next day. But
yeah, I also live in Portland, and I commute to the ranger districts where I work. We do have some government housing that's available at some of the district sites, and so we do have some employees who do actually live in government housing that's close by to the work sites.
Okay. Awesome. And then we did have one other question that says, do you work as engineers in the national parks too, or is that through a different organization?
Yeah, so we are separate. We are different agencies. So the Park Service has their own engineering workforce that supports them, but I would say that we do have several projects where we work with them, together with them, but we do have separate staffing. Good.
Okay. Yeah, well, thank you all so much just for kind of being here. We do have one last question that says, are there any programs for kids our age, so middle school students, to get involved?
I believe there are like the volunteering.
Yeah.
We do have volunteer agreements that you can be part of. You probably just have to go to a Forest Service office and ask about it and be on the volunteer program.
There's also just, I know that you guys are older than 4th grade, but there is a special program for 4th graders. So if you have a younger sibling, and it gives you a free pass for the 4th grader and their whole family to get into any public land, so park, forest, for the whole year, I think. And it's a really, it was really created so that we could introduce more people to public lands and provide easier access. So if you haven't heard of it, you should be able to Google that and get some information.
Okay. Yeah, so I think those were all of our questions. But we will just wrap up with one last question, which is if you could give a piece of advice to yourself back when you were in middle or high school, what would it be?
For me, would be, since I was quite shy, I would probably tell myself back in like high school to get more involved, and even if like your friend isn't joining those clubs that you're interested in, just go and be part of it. It's not, it'll be worth it at the end.
Yeah, and I kind of something similar, which is, I think for me, I always have to remind myself to be more confident in my abilities. And so I do think, I know the phrase is the sky's the limit, but really all sorts of opportunities out there to explore. And even now today, more later in my career, it's something I have to tell myself every day. So try everything that you can for more experience.
Yeah, and I think I would agree with that too. It's get involved, find things that you love and try to find a job that you can go do or a way to volunteer so that you get that experience. And once you get your foot in the door, it's easy to find those full-time opportunities, whatever they are. So find something that aligns with your passion.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much again for kind of being part of this field trip and for sharing your stories with us.
Thank you. Happy Engineers Week.
Yeah. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.